Hi guys, welcome to episode 7 of WP Bros Academy. In this episode, we'll be exploring inner blocks and we'll be using this approach for our custom paragraph block.
Hi guys, good to be back with you for this video today. Apologies that you've had to wait a while for this one. Not together, but both separately. James and I have had babies at the beginning of this year, and we have been keeping ourselves pretty busy with that recently. Not to mention, I also moved home and bought our first place just before the baby arrived. So it's been a bit of a mental year for us. So if we're looking a little bit tired tonight, you know the reason why. But yeah, we're really excited to be getting back into this and can't wait to start diving a little bit deeper into building some custom blocks for Gutenberg and just sharing our knowledge like we were previously. So yeah, hopefully you guys are still interested, still along for the ride. And as James said at the beginning, we're going to be converting our paragraph block today over to using inner blocks rather than our rich text field that we were using previously. And there's a ton of benefits to doing it that way, which we're going to obviously look at throughout this video. But the main ones are obviously you still get to keep the wrapper settings that we had before. We get the benefit of being able to use some of the core blocks, which are fantastic at getting you 90% of the way there. And then we can just obviously wrap some additional functionality and different features around them, which is brilliant. And we get things like the color settings, the typography settings, all of that good stuff that comes with the core paragraph block. But obviously we get to encase it in our own block and build on top of that. So yeah, I think you guys are going to find this really beneficial. I think inner blocks are super powerful. I've had a little bit more experience recently, again, diving back into custom block development, and pretty much all of my development time is with inner blocks going forward. So yeah, I think this will be a valuable one, and hopefully you learn a thing or two today. And as always, if we don't cover something and you have some knowledge yourself, feel free to drop a comment below and share that knowledge with us and the rest of the community, because yeah, I'd love to hear some of your experiences as well with it.
Great stuff. Yeah, can't wait to get back into it. I think it's been well overdue, and let's just get cracking, shall we? Let's start converting this paragraph block. So let's open up our VS Code.
Let's do it.
And we'll just kind of familiarize ourselves quickly with where we were last time. So in the previous episode, we got up to creating our paragraph block. And like Phil said, today we're going to be duplicating this, and then we're going to be starting from that point and converting it to using the inner blocks, because there's no point reinventing the wheel. Obviously, we were showing you how to create your own custom block, but in this kind of scenario, there's no need to create a paragraph block because the core block has that functionality. So there's no point. So we'll just use what Gutenberg have already provided us, and we'll wrap our settings around it. So the first step is to duplicate our paragraph block. So I'm just going to copy that and I'm just going to paste that into our block library. And now we just need to rename that block. So I think we just call it paragraph-inner for inner blocks.
Yeah, that'll do for now.
That'll do for now. So we've got that. And then now we just need to change the name in a few places inside of our paragraph block, because obviously everywhere is going to have just paragraph. We need to change it to paragraph inner. Before we do dive into all of the files within the block, let's just update it or add it into our multi-block plugin file.
Yeah.
So you see we've got block 1 and paragraph. So all we need to do is just add another line. Don't forget the comma. Just add inner. That's all we need to do inside of here. So what's the next step, Phil?
Yeah, so this one will register it on the server side. So now we need to just replicate it in the index.js file within the paragraph inner directory, and just update that block name that we're passing to that function. And a little recap worth noting is just whatever we pass that first argument to this function has to match your block.json file. So where we're updating this name, if you open block.json on line 4, you've obviously got the name property, and that has to match because it's going to register that name and all the settings from the block.json file.
Perfect. So we also need to update it in a few other places in this file. So that's where they're the paths to the JS and the CSS files. So we can just literally add that to the end of each of these.
Yeah.
And I think that is it. That's all the paths and the names sorted in this file. We've also got some attributes in here that we're no longer going to need, like because we're changing to the inner blocks, we're not going to be actually having our own rich text component with its own settings. We can actually get rid of the content attribute because we're not storing any of our own content. We can also get rid of the text color attribute and also the background color attribute because the core paragraph block has its own color settings and typography settings, so we can actually just get rid of those from our block, which is great.
Perfect.
So that's the block.json for now, I think. Have I missed anything?
I think, that looks all good to me now. Text domain maybe, paragraph inner, line 14.
Yep.
And also maybe the title as well on line 6.
Yeah. Good spot.
Quite a few different places. So just go through it methodically, check it line by line, and just make sure you capture all of the different places that you want to update your new block name to. It doesn't have to be block inner; it could be whatever you want to call your block. For us, just for ease today, we're going to call it paragraph inner. But yeah, looks good to me now.
Okay, brilliant. So next step.
Okay, so we might as well just work through this methodically and just go to the next file, which will be the edit.js file.
Perfect.
So
A lot going on in here, I guess, that we need to strip out and replace with things. So should we just go through from the top and work our way down?
Let's do it.
Explain why we're doing it. Okay, so first line then, we're importing the rich text component, which we're not going to need anymore, are we? Because we're going to be using the core paragraph block. So we can actually
replace that like for like with the inner blocks component.
Okay, and that's just capitalized.
Capital I,
blocks.
capital B. That's it.
Brilliant. That's just going to give us the component to allow it for inner blocks within our block.
That's right. Yeah. It is. I can never remember if it's got an S on the end of inner blocks or not. Inner blocks, but has got an S on the end.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Cool. So that's it. Panel body, color palette. I don't think there's anything else to scrap from there.
We've got to get rid of some
we come
attributes,
down.
haven't we?
Yes, that's right. So
we got rid of content, didn't we? We got rid of text color and we got rid of background color from our block.json.
That's it.
So they can go. And then we've got some panels that we could get rid of because we're not going to need the text settings anymore. So these panels were relating to the wrapper settings. If we scroll a bit further down, we've got text settings. So we can actually just remove this whole panel, can't we?
Yeah, that whole panel can go now.
Cool.
So we're cleaning up our files as well by using inner blocks, which is nice because less code, less to maintain, which is brilliant. That's what we want.
Okay. We've got this background image up here, which we didn't actually add in, but we can get around to that at some point. But that's just to add a background image to our wrapper. So further down, we've got our rich text component, which is actually no longer needed. So we can literally just delete that. Have I missed anything else?
So this is where our inner blocks will live, basically. I think I don't think we've missed any other. Yeah, don't think we've missed any other places to delete stuff. But yeah, so inner blocks there.
Perfect. So we'll just leave it as a self-closing component for now, but we'll add some bits into it at some point. I think we also, I just saw as I was scrolling through that there are some, I'm sure there was some, maybe it's not in this file anymore, for the internationalization. Do we need it
Yeah.
in this file? I'm not actually seeing those.
No, I don't actually think so.
No, I think it was in the panel body that I just deleted, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's fine. So we actually don't need to import that. The underscores internationalization. And we
Yeah.
don't actually need that in this block anymore, so that's good.
No.
Okay, so I think that's it for now, unless we're going to start talking about inner blocks and looking at the documentation and stuff like that.
Let's tidy up the save.js file, then we can come back
all right,
maybe
brilliant.
and add it in. Yeah.
Let's do that then.
So finally, we're heading over to save.js, last file to update. And again, just like with the edit.js, we can do a like-for-like switch. It's coming from the block editor package. So yeah, import inner blocks instead of rich text. And again, that rich text.content in the return JSX can get swapped out exactly like for like without the props with just inner blocks.content.
And then just delete all of these inner
Just
props.
delete that. Yeah.
And it's content with a function, isn't it? Is it?
No,
not?
it's just
not.
no.
It's not.
It's just that. It's just exactly that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Okay. And then just get rid of some attributes.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't need the content, we don't need text color, we don't need background color.
Perfect.
Cool.
Do we need anything else in here? We'll come back to this file, I think.
Yeah, we'll come back to this file, I think.
That cleans it up, but we might need to add a couple bits in at some point.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, that looks good to me. So what do you want to do next?
Much cleaner now. So should we talk about inner blocks for a second then, and just maybe kind of go through some of the documentation in the edit.js file? Because as I said, I think they're really powerful. And I think there's a lot that inner blocks offer us. So if you go to the other tab, the nested blocks one for now, this is like the inner blocks main documentation page on the handbook. It's really, really good. So you can come here yourself. Obviously, we'll put the link in the description, but it tells you about, there's only a couple of props on the inner blocks, but you can have things like inner block templates, which we'll discuss in a second. You can have an array of allowed inner blocks. So if you think there's 20, 25, 30 odd core blocks that are created in the block library, you may not want to allow all of those blocks into your inner block. You may be very specific, and as per that example in front, maybe just allow an image and a paragraph as your inner blocks. So you can be super flexible. You can really tighten things up as well and be very specific about what you want with your inner blocks, which is really, really nice. You can change the orientation. You can do the template, post templates, which are really powerful.
So the templates
you can set parent and ancestors as well, which is really, really good.
And the templates are so that you can say which blocks are going to fall into the page when you click the block. When you click on your custom block, what blocks go inside immediately, and what settings do those blocks have?
Exactly. So just creating a nicer user experience for your users, rather than just kind of adding an empty block to the page, which may be the experience you want sometimes, to just give them full control and let them go through it one by one and just add whatever they want. But there may be other occasions where you actually want to kind of set it up for them. Maybe you want a heading, maybe you want a paragraph, maybe you want a button or two, and you can use inner block templates to create that. So rather than them having to do those 4 steps manually, as soon as they add your custom block to the page, they'll be met with a heading field, a paragraph field, and 2 buttons as an example.
Perfect.
So yeah, really, really powerful. And as you can see on that example there as well, you can really kind of nest your array of arrays, which is what the block templates are. And you can set things like placeholders. So any of the attributes. So if you take that core heading as an example, in the example they're adding a placeholder to the core heading block. But there are other attributes on the core heading blocks that you can also manipulate. You can set the heading level, so you can choose whether you want that heading level by default to be a level 1, a H1, a H2, a H3. So you've got real control over these templates, and you can create a really personal, specific layout for that specific blocks that you're creating, and you can kind of lead people to creating exactly the blocks that you're trying to build for them. So yeah, I think they're super powerful, and it's a great way of using what's already there while also building on top of it and adding some of your own settings and adding some of your own functionality to some of these core blocks as well.
Super powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that would be great for our the block that we're creating now, because we can specify that we just want maybe a heading block and a paragraph block to be the only blocks allowed, and then we can show them how that's working, and that would be pretty cool. Are there any
Yeah.
other things on here? I think that's pretty much everything.
That's pretty much everything. I mean, there's a lot to go into, so I'm probably not going to go into it all today. But yeah, I would definitely recommend obviously going through the documentation. Documentation is getting a lot better every time I come back to the developer handbook. And I know that they're consciously working on some of the Gutenberg block development guides and documentation all the time at the moment. So go and check it out, see what you can do with it, have fun playing about with it. But yeah, I think inner blocks are super, super powerful.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the description as always, so you can have a look and have a play around. Did you want to open up this block templates
Yeah, we might as well
documentation?
go and have a quick look at it, because there's, again, I mean, we won't touch on it too long. We've covered a lot of it, but this just kind of expands on the
Yeah.
previous tab. So obviously you get a bird's eye view on the inner blocks page, and now if you come through to here, you get some really in-depth information about exactly what you can do with this block templates. Some of it we've already covered. You can obviously set placeholders. You can, set certain text, colors, whatever you want to select for the blocks that you've chosen. Individual block locking. That's it.
Mm.
If you scroll down, or I think scroll down slightly further, you can actually lock blocks. With remove and move. So yeah, you can kind of set whether you want blocks A to be movable within the order that you've set them up, and also if you want the user to be able to remove them. So say for instance you've got a custom heading block, and you add an inner block of the core heading block, you can actually choose whether you want to maybe lock that down. And actually, because this is a heading block, maybe you don't want to give the user the choice to be able to delete that, because then it kind of makes the heading block redundant and pointless, really. So you may say for this block it has to have a heading, and you can lock it down and stop the user from removing that, which is really, really good. And I think there's some further developments around kind of block locking and template locking coming in WordPress 6.1 as well. So be interesting to see what further developments they kind of offer this.
Yeah, I love that block locking feature for developers. It's a great feature to be able to control. So that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can go nested as well. If you scroll down to the very bottom, you've got, like, obviously with like the core columns block, obviously that's quite a nested. You can have like an array, so you can actually set up like the core columns, and then within the core columns you can set up your 2-column layout as an example. So again, like, that's really cool if you wanted to build out your own columns block with all the bells and whistles that you wanted to create. So there's all sorts of things you can do. You're limited literally by your imagination and what sort of functionality you want to create, really. So again, check out the block templates documentation. We'll put the link in the description. But yeah, we're gonna use a couple of these features today, and we'll obviously show you how that's working.
Cool. Okay, so now that we've explained what inner blocks are and some of the documentation, how are we going to actually use them for our blocks? So first of all, edit.js seems like the place to start.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to define, well, what allowed blocks are we going to have, and potentially what templates are we going to set up so it automatically adds the blocks in with some settings already. So where do we add that, Phil?
So we want to be just above our return JSX function. So within our component, our edit function, but yeah, just above the return function. And then we can literally set up something like const. I normally do these in capitals. I don't think they have to be, but I just tend to do it like this because documentation shows it like this. And then what allowed blocks do we want? A heading and a paragraph, as you said, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Tend to always need a heading whenever you add a paragraph, so let's just put it together. And then people can choose whether or not they want it or not. They could just delete the heading and just keep the paragraph block.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the allowed blocks, which we're going to add to our inner blocks component beneath in a minute. That's just literally an array, and the array just takes a comma separated string of the name of the blocks. So here we've got core / heading. That's the name of the block, and core paragraph is the name of the block. So if you had your own custom one, like for instance, we've got in our block.json create block paragraph inner, you could spread that in here as well. So it doesn't just have to be obviously the core ones. You can add whatever blocks you want here, but it's just the name of the block basically. It's just comma separated string to get you started. So yeah, that's the allowed blocks, nice and easy, nothing too tricky there. And then next for the block templates, we're going to want obviously that's an array of arrays. I can't even say that, an array of arrays. And again, you can call this again whatever you want. I tend to just stick with this because this is what I saw in the documentation when I first started doing this. But it doesn't have to be called block templates. I don't think it has to be capitals either. You can call this whatever you want. But yeah, let's just set ourselves up with an array of arrays. So again, the first argument in the inner array is the name of the block. So not capital, sorry. So core heading. And then within that, you can pass an object of settings. So let's say we want the text color to be, and this takes a string. So if you want to know what you can actually pass for like the object settings and where I've got this from, this was literally just digging around in the Gutenberg GitHub repository. So if you go to the Gutenberg GitHub repository, the package where all of the core blocks live is within the blocks library package. And if you go to the blocks library package and then the source folder, you'll see a list of all of the core blocks. And I just basically got curious and started looking at some of the block.json files for the blocks that we're going to work with, and just looked at what attributes they actually have set up for those blocks. Whatever attributes they've got set up, you can kind of control those attributes here through this object. So they've got text color attribute set up for the core heading block. They've also got a level attribute which determines the heading level. So H1, H2, H3. So let's give it a H1 for now. Level 1, and then a placeholder of enter title here. Cool. So that's our first array done.
Brilliant.
Name and settings. And then just literally we can replicate this rather than writing this all out from scratch now. And we can literally go give us paragraph block for the second one. For this one, text color of primary, there is no level attribute for the paragraph block, obviously, because it's not heading. And then we can just add another placeholder again, add paragraph text here.
Perfect.
So we've now got an array of 2 arrays, and within them, we're obviously registering 2 different inner blocks. And then we can just close that one off with the semicolon.
Super easy, isn't it? That's really, really good.
Yeah, it's not too difficult. It's nice and clean. Obviously, as I said, we're keeping this super basic, but you can obviously go and experiment. A lot of everything that I'm learning at the moment to do with block development is all through the GitHub repository. I spend a lot of my time looking through the core blocks, the GitHub repository, looking at their block.json to see what sort of attributes they've got set up, looking at their edit.js files, their save.js files, looking at how they're doing things, and then just tailoring them to my needs, basically. So I highly recommend getting yourselves familiar with the GitHub repository. And obviously, you may find other settings that you want to control and other attributes that you want to set up as a placeholder when you're doing your block. But this is just really to show you the very, very basics and just to get us off the ground and get us started today, really.
Okay. So I'm not sure whether we do have an error somewhere, but it's got this little error somewhere. I don't know if that is an error. There we go.
Cool.
So now we've added those. How do we actually use these inside of our inner blocks component?
Cool. So yeah, as we showed on the inner blocks documentation page, these are basically a couple of props that we can add to our inner blocks component. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add them on maybe. So you can just literally just add them on as a prop. So I think the props are the same names basically. So allowed blocks and templates.
Okay, so you just do equals, and then we just literally take
allow blocks equals, and then we're going to open up JavaScript braces to move into JS just to, yeah, exactly. And then we're just going to, put the array in, done. And then the next prop is template without an S. And again, we're just going to do exactly the same.
And then what did we call that? We called it blocks template.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfect. So now we've created our inner blocks and we're just passing these as props to our inner blocks, which is cool. Nice and clean again. You can see not much to that really. So now we're going to need to obviously, what's the next step now? Should we just check we've got everything maybe set up in this file and then move over and just confirm? I think we're nearly at the end of this. So
yeah,
just make sure we've got everything kind of fully set up and then we can give it a test.
I think that's everything in edit.js. I don't think there's anything else we need to add that I can see. If we spot something later down the line, we can pop back in.
Yeah.
So save.js.
Perfect. Yeah. So if we head over to save.js, I think I've spotted something that we'll need to add actually. Cool. So I think, let's have a quick look. We've got inner wrapper width. So I think we're going to need to pass a second attribute into the save function because I don't think we're destructuring one of the attributes we're going to need in the save function.
Okay.
So I think that's the outer wrapper background color in the edit.js file.
Yeah, I wonder why that's not in there.
Not sure. So yeah, if we destructure that, and then what we want to do actually is probably replicate the exact style. We can just copy that over maybe from the edit.js file. So we're passing it to use block props in the edit.js file there. But it appears for some reason probably ran out of time or just missed it. we just didn't include that in the save.js. So
And do you change that colon to something, or
no, it should be fine.
do you put an equals? Isn't it an equals? Because it's
No, it's just an object. You'll need to wrap the whole style in an object. So within the
there we
saves,
go.
that's why it's throwing an error. Yeah,
And it's there, I believe.
that's it.
There we go.
Perfect. Yeah, that's it. I think. Yeah, it looks good to me. So now we're just spreading that on. So I was playing about with this. I think previously I maybe had in my head that the use block props actually carried those props over into the save function, but it turns out they don't. So if you're spreading styles or classes in your edit.js file to your use block props function, you just need to remember to carry that stuff over into your save.js file as well, because otherwise you just end up losing stuff.
I've also noticed that we don't have this wrapper class on our save div either, and I think we're probably going to need that in there,
We'll need
otherwise
that.
it won't have the wrapper styling that we've got in
Perfect.
style.scss to give it the
love
margin
that.
auto. Okay, that looks about right.
Perfect. So that's looking good now, yeah.
Okay, so we've got our save.js complete, we've got our edit.js complete.
Yep.
Is it time to test this out?
I think it's time to give it a spin.
Okay, let's test this out.
Let's do it.
Right, so we're on our test site. And now we can check to see if our paragraph inner block is available. And there you see it there. So if we click on this now, you'll see that it will auto load the two blocks that we added into our template. So now you see we've got our enter our title here placeholder, and we've got enter paragraph text here placeholder, and it's automatically added those blocks for us, which is brilliant.
Yeah, just to mention that that's only done that because we've obviously used that template props on the inner blocks. Had we not have used that, we could have obviously in our allowed blocks, we allowed a heading and a paragraph, but what would have happened is we would have added our block, our custom block to the page, and it would have just been completely blank, and it would have had the little default
plus
render appender, and you would have had to manually add a heading and then a paragraph underneath. So all we've done is created a slightly nicer user experience by creating that template, and you can see how powerful that is just to create an initial state for your users.
Yeah, and they can change everything. They can change the heading, size, everything. And what's also really cool now is that we've got all of the styling settings that come with those core blocks. So we've got those color settings, so we can change it to white, for example. We've got background color. There's all these really cool settings that we've got straight out of the box. Over in the typography settings, you've got the little three dots, and you can add more settings that you can't see straight away. So there's some really rich features here that would take a little bit of time if you had to build this all yourself. So it makes so much sense just to use what's already there and available to you.
The core blocks are great, and they're getting better all the time. I still feel I was playing about with this earlier. I've heard a lot of comments from the community recently saying, just either use the core blocks, you can build everything with the core blocks, or just extend the core blocks with hooks and filters, which you might be able to do for some basic extensions of some of the core blocks. But my personal opinion, I was playing about with this at the weekend, and when I get spare time, kind of during the day at work as well. And my gut is that the core blocks are still very, very basic to build out rich pages and templates that we would normally be building, for our agency for clients. But as you said, why reinvent the wheel? Because there is a lot of great functionality that does come out of the box with them. So just lean on that. Just use your inner blocks, and I'm going to keep continuing to build complete custom blocks, because I still don't think, even with hooks and filters, they're quite there yet as standalone blocks. But when you're incorporating them into something better and bigger, they're fantastic. Why waste time creating sizing and line height settings and all of this when you can just
Yeah,
get it out of the box?
it's not worth it. And just quickly want to show you that if I click over just to the left hand side, I can actually still select our main block. It's kind of hard to actually get to it though, unless I'm already on it. No. There. So where can we get to our wrapper settings? Something's glitching out here. I can't seem to get back to the wrapper settings, but maybe let me just add a title and just update the page quickly. Because I think that's a key point to show that obviously we've still got all of our settings. I'm not sure what's going on here. There's a few other weird empty blocks. Okay, so if I click here now, here we go. Okay, so it's a little bit fiddly, as you all know with Gutenberg. It takes a bit of time to find the bit you need to click on. But now you can see that we've actually selected our entire custom paragraph in a block. And now we've got our wrapper settings, we've got our background color, we've got our content width, so we can change the size of the screen, but you can't actually see that unless you click a line full width. And now if I change the content area, again, you can't really notice it happening because we haven't got a lot of text in here, but you can actually see the plus symbol move as I change this. So the actual content width that we set earlier for our wrapper is actually working.
Yeah.
So I think that's it, guys. I think that's inner blocks at its most basic level. Obviously, go ahead and explore and extend it and do what you want. But we really hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're really happy that we're back and there's so much more content to come. So as always, like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in episode 8.